friends. Hello, hi, how are you? I hope you guys are having an amazing day today. So today, I am chilling. I have this big fluff. This is literally like a fur sweatshirt and I feel like a bear. And I'm not wearing any makeup and I just couldn't be bothered to put on makeup for this video, honestly. Just because, like, why would I? I'm like peak comfort right now. I'm not trying to ruin that. And I also feel like this is gonna be a very ranty video, and not even ranty, just like, come on. And I also feel like I rant better when I'm cozy. So we're being cozy today. We're gonna be talking about everything that has been going on with Trisha Paytas. I went back and forth on whether to touch on this topic, just because there's a lot to unpack with what's been going on the past few days, like a lot. And I didn't know if I wanted to like fully dive into this, but then I like thought about it, and I do feel that because of my background, because of what I'm studying in school, I feel like I can give a unique perspective to this that I haven't seen a ton of people discussing when it comes to this situation, and so I decided to make this video. For those of you that have never met me before, I know this is, got one comment that was like, no one, and then it was like, Hannah,
I'm a social work major.
But I'm a social work major right now. I'm a senior social work student, currently finishing up my like observation and final projects and stuff like that. And I also I'm adding on a minor in sociology kind of recently, just because I realized I qualify for it. So I'm gonna add it, but I take a lot of sociology classes. And while I am a cisgendered woman and I use the pronouns her, hers, and hers, and I identify with the gender that I was born as, I am a part of the LGBTQIA+ community. There's that. That's like all the pertinent information. Trisha Paytas, if you don't know, the video has, I think, 1.6 million views at this point. Trisha Paytas released a video. I am transgender, female to male, and there's a picture of her looking hyper feminine, and there's a picture of her looking more masculine. We're gonna touch on all those things in a second because I have a lot of thoughts about gender being a social construct, and we'll get into that. I feel like people say that and then nobody explains what that means, so I want to explain what that means. But basically, Trisha uploaded that video and people were mad and offended, and I definitely understand being offended. There's a lot to unpack with that. In the video, she basically expressed that, and I don't know, this is the problem, is because in the video, Trisha was very unclear about, she didn't say what pronouns she wanted to be used is the problem. So I don't really know how to approach this without being insensitive, because here's how to start this, is Trisha is a huge troll. She trolls in tons of videos. She's always trolling. She's always making videos that are, you know, really provocative just for the sake of views and attention. Why did you just make a noise? And does part of me think that this video was something like that, where she just like views were low, she hadn't been in a scandal in a couple months and she needed attention? Part of me does think that, but if there is even a 1% chance that Trisha genuinely is questioning her gender identity, and I'm gonna just use her pronouns because I really don't, she hasn't really said what she would prefer, I guess. So I'm gonna use that, and if I'm wrong, I apologize. So Trisha basically talked about in the video how she's questioning and she doesn't know like what's going on, and she feels like a man because there was a lot of really random things were said that were just like, I feel I have dick energy, like I feel like I'm really powerful, like I feel like I'm a man. And she talked about having like all of these different things, like just like how it's so hard to explain the video because it really was all over the place. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, here's the thing. Her being all over the place and being confused, there's nothing empirically wrong with that. It's just the way that she said certain things and provided misinformation. That was the problem. A lot of the misinformation she spread, I found to be particularly problematic, mostly because she has such a huge following. Trisha has about almost 5 million subscribers, I'm pretty sure. She's like in the 4 millions. Over 1 million people watched that video. And I just feel, even if you are going through something, as a person with a platform, you have a responsibility to still be saying things in a way that are at least somewhat accurate. Like, I get it that if she is just starting to go through this process, although she said that she's been seeing a gender therapist for 6 months, so I don't know. Because I feel like a gender therapist would have explained a lot of these things to her. And also, I want to mention this before I forget, Gigi Gorgeous has like a fantastic video on this situation on Trisha's first video, and I thought Gigi's video was really good. I'll link it below. You guys should go check it out. Gigi actually identifies as trans, and Gigi Gigi offered some really good insight into what Trisha was saying. So she's going off on all those things, and there was kind of like immediate backlash because, again, Trisha's a troll, so I don't think a lot of people believe her, which I think is valid, actually.
I don't believe her.
She said a lot of things that were definitely misinformed and not necessarily politically correct when it comes to the trans community. And I think a lot of it comes from a place of like, she made very sweeping generalizations about gender, such as, well, I prefer having short hair and having, you know, my boobs taped down, so that means I'm a boy. There was a lot of stuff about her sexuality that didn't really have anything to do with gender. Those are like two separate issues. I think if this is actually an internal struggle that she is having, I think Trisha's just very confused, which is totally normal and fine. However, what I don't think is totally normal and fine is getting on camera and venting and talking about this issue. This isn't like calling out a Vlog Squad member. This is something that people are dying because of. And spreading misinformation or spreading stereotypes is never a good thing. So I kind of wanted to take this opportunity to delve into just the whole concept of gender and gender identity and all of these things, because I think it's a really misunderstood topic. And it's also like not a super complicated one. I think everyone thinks it's so complicated. It's really not. It's actually quite simple. So when people say something like gender is a social construct, I feel like people roll their eyes because they're like, ugh, freaking snowflakes. Like, I feel like that's always the reaction when I say something like that. But like, what does that actually mean? Because it's a really simple idea. Basically, when we're having a baby, right? If somebody's having a baby, your best friend is having a baby, why do you, if it's a girl, why do you automatically buy them something pink? And if it's a boy, why do you buy them something blue? Why? It's because society has ideas in our own society, specifically, especially in like America. We have various perceptions of what it means to be a boy and what it means to be a girl. There's nothing biologically that would say girls would be more drawn to wear makeup than boys are. There's nothing that does that. The only thing that does that is because from a young age, you see mommy putting on makeup in the morning and you don't see dad doing that. That's the only reason. Like, that's the only difference. Gender being a social construct just means that the idea of gender, it's less about gender being a social construct and more about gender roles being a social construct, because the way that we see women and the way that we see men and the different stereotypes and characteristics are very much based on societal norms, what society deems acceptable. Like, all of that is based on that. And this has been stuff that's been going on for years. Like, women, especially in America, the past like few hundred years that we've been around, women have always been seen as more feminine, more delicate. That's why we weren't allowed to work for a really long time. It's why we weren't allowed to vote for a really long time, because for a while we were seen as stupid. And those sort of more extreme ideologies, I think, have started to dissipate a little bit, I would hope. Those are starting to go away. We have more women now in college than we do men, so I would hope the idea that women are just stupid has gone away, but you never know. And all of those things. But yet still, we think about gender in a very formal way. We think if you're a girl, you should play dress up, and if you're a boy, you should play dinosaurs. I think what people are kind of freaked out about, which I hope you're not, by now, is people allowing especially children to make decisions for themselves on gender. So if a little boy wants to paint his nails, he can, because there's nothing biologically that says boys wouldn't also have an interest in painting their nails. If a little girl wants to cut her hair very short, there is nothing biologically that says girls have to have longer hair and boys have to have shorter hair. Those are all social constructions. Those are all things we as a society has made up. So now we're seeing younger kids kind of going through these things and being more like, okay, well, I like to paint my nails, but I also like playing with dump trucks. And we're seeing this with older people too. We're seeing this with, even people online who share their kind of stories. And I think where it gets confusing for people is there's a difference between something called gender fluidity, and there's a difference, but there's a lot of different like names, and at that part I get that people get confused by this, but I think what Trisha was really describing was a gender fluid type of idea, because Trisha was like, I don't identify as non-binary, which non-binary is basically you don't identify as any gender, so you are just they, them, theirs. Like, those are the pronouns that non-binary people tend to use, and they don't identify as any gender. They just, one day they could do more boy-like things or more girl-like things, but that they're not identifying as any of those things. They're just them, okay? That's pretty simple to me. Why people can't just understand that is like, I don't get it. And then you have people who are more gender fluid, which is kind of what Trisha's describing, where some days they wake up and they're just like, I am a girl. Like, I feel like a girl today. I want to be a girl today. Like, that is who I am today. And then some days they wake up and they're like, I'm a boy today. I'm a boy. And that is more an idea of going against societal and traditional gender norms. Whereas being trans, that's a completely different thing. And that's what Trisha is claiming that she's doing. She is transitioning female to male. But it was, again, confusing because then it was like, but some days I'm a girl, some days I want to do makeup, some days I want to do that. So it was like, it's kind of a confusing thing the way that she is describing it. And again, I think if this is not trolling, I think she just doesn't know what's going on. I also just want to add a side note here that you don't have to identify as any of the things that I'm talking about. People within communities like the LGBTQIA+ community find labels helpful because it's an easy way to kind of, it's like a fit. It's like a way to fit who you are. It's a word to explain who you are. But there are also people who do not like that and don't appreciate that and don't want to be labeled and don't want to be labeled. They don't want to be in that box, right? So it's perfectly okay for you, Trisha, anyone, to not fit these labels. However, I do think that labels can sometimes help. This is my personal opinion. Just based on what I've seen and people I've worked with, labels can help people put a word to what they're feeling. So that's why I touched on that. But do not feel like you have to conform to any of these labels because that's not the tea. Being trans is totally different from those things. Being trans is being born feeling like you were born into the wrong body. You have the wrong body. That's a lot more to do with the sex that you're born. And this is the best way that anyone, the simplest way a professor described it to me is gender is a societal thing. It's a choice. It's kind of the norms that are thrust upon us. And sex is biological. It is biologically the body parts that you are born with. So if you are trans, you are talking about your sexuality, not your gender identity for the most part. Because usually with people who identify as trans, they want to get, surgeries to change it. They want to get hormones or estrogen, or they are trying to actively make that change. Whereas other people, it's kind of just like, they're kind of free-spirited. They just don't want to follow societal constructs. That is the best way I could explain that. I'm sorry if that was long-winded and boring. That's just like, I felt like it needed to be said because I've seen a lot of people being like, no, Trisha's non-binary. No, Trisha's this. Like, Trisha's just pansexual. And it's like, no, no. There's a lot of different things going on here, but I think the best one that would describe what Trisha was explaining was gender fluidity. So I do think it's slightly dangerous to be portraying the feelings that Trisha is feeling as being trans, because those are not that's not typically what it would mean for somebody to be trans. That's not to say that's not at all the feelings, but those were just kind of stereotypes. It's not necessarily true, because for people who are trans, they've done a lot of studies on this, and it's not necessarily a choice. It's not something you wake up and you choose one day to be something else and then you choose to be this the next day. Like, being trans is like a psychological thing where you literally from birth, you think you're in the wrong body. So I think it is dangerous to portray to her audience that identifying as trans is as simple as just one day waking up and deciding you like how your hair looks short and you like not having boobs, so you're a boy. Because it's not that simple. And especially I think because Trisha is in such a privileged position, because she is. This brings me to the apology, okay? Because then she made this big apology and she was crying and it was like, poor me. And honestly, you guys, like, I had felt bad for Trisha a little bit because of course in the back of my head, I'm like, what if this is real? Like, what if this is real? And then the apology happened and I'm still sitting here like, what if this is real? I don't want to trash somebody if I think it could be real, even potentially. I just think that's so dangerous to trash somebody if there's even a 1% chance it's real. But when the apology happened, I just couldn't help but think, Trisha made a comment where she said, I'm just so jealous of other trans people because they just get to live their open and proud and honest life, and I don't get to do that. And that is just such a blatant misrepresentation of the cultural climate around the trans community right now, and also just around the LGBTQIA+ community in general. I feel like it's really important to remind everyone that literally in 2019, a law was passed so that people who identify as trans cannot serve in the military. So that's just where we're at. Like, this, I watch this back and I feel like I'm not passionate enough in speaking about this, because in no way, shape, or form are people
in the trans community, or people just in the LGBTQI plus community in general, living this happy-go-lucky, privileged life where they get to live their authentic selves. I so wish that was the case, but it's just not. And to her represent it like it is to millions of people is reaffirming the idea that this isn't a problem when it absolutely is. That's it. Okay, thank you.
Because that's not at all the case, especially in a lot of parts of the country. Maybe in Los Angeles, that's the case, I guess. Maybe in her circle, that is the case. But people are dying because of that. They're getting murdered by other people because there's so much hate and animosity towards the unknown. And people who chose to make those decisions or just simply couldn't even choose. This is just their life. This is just how this is how they have to live their life if they want to live an authentic life. And to me, it's just really hard for me to sit there and feel anything but annoyed at someone like Trisha, who, yes, she's getting a lot of hate online. And I do wish that people would come, kind of like what Gigi said, I do wish people would come from a place of education instead of coming from a place of hate, because I think we're gonna be so much better off that way, especially on issues like this, where it's not just like a small T like mess up, like this is actually like a huge issue, like a global issue. And I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. And I think instead of trying to hate on Trisha, we need to be turning this into a bigger conversation about all of these different communities and about gender norms, about, you know, societal pressures to be the gender that you look like, all of those different things. And also, the thing I think Trisha doesn't talk about too is her privilege as a woman who is pretty rich. Thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who right now feel like they are being trapped in a body that is not theirs and they can't afford to fix that. Trisha has a lot of privilege in this situation, even if she is going through something. And again, I hate that it's even like if she is, but she's just such a troll and she's so attention hungry.
Also want to point out that I think there is a huge mental health aspect to that. And I think Trisha's been very open about that. And I think that's something that also should be taken into account.
And it just feels so convenient that she hasn't had like a scandal in a hot minute and now she's doing this type of stuff. Like, it just is so hard for me to like accept that this is something that's going on. But like, you have to think about these things. You have to think about the what ifs. And I think it's tough. It's a tough situation. I more wanted to talk about it from the perspective of gender and identity, because I think these are important conversations that we need to have. And if anything, I'm glad that she brought all this up because we get to have these types of conversations. However, I don't know if Trisha is the right person to be having them. I don't think she's looked into any sort of information to make this a more like positive and informed decision to talk about this so publicly. Which I do think when you have an audience, you have an obligation to do. I'm really curious to hear what you guys have to think. Please don't leave nasty, vicious, vile comments about Trisha, because I have my very big issues with Trisha, but I think this is a situation where we really need to fight, just like what Gigi said, like we really need to fight. Instead of hating on her, we need to educate. And it's the same thing with everyone, like fight with education. It's the best way you can do it. And yeah. Sorry if this was just me rambling for like 20 minutes. I love you guys so much. I hope you like this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, or just like, or just subscribe, or do neither. Honestly, just so happy you're watching me. Thank you so much for being here. My merch, my social media, and everything I'm wearing on my face will be linked down below, along with a link to register to vote. That's right. You can go register to vote. It's super fun. You can go register to vote in your local, state, and federal elections. And also make sure you double check to make sure you actually are registered, because I heard some people think they're registered and then they're not. And if that link does not apply to you and you do not live in the United States, please make sure you're staying informed on what's going on around you. Just use your voice in a positive way. The world absolutely needs it. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!